and that we get to work here. I mean, we get to come to work every day in the villa, and you know, it's pretty nice. We're pretty lucky with that, and we enjoy it all the time. So we're glad that you're here, and welcome.
I actually do remember the 1980s when the house was not in that good a shape, and the person who was the only resource management person at the time, Beth Johnson, eventually built up a division and became the chief of resource management and inspired the restoration of this house as a headquarters for the science and research that would take place in the park. So the house has come a long way, and it's looking pretty good right now. And we're very thrilled to have all of you here, and you know.
Could I ask a question? Perhaps it's the right moment to unveil.
Well, maybe, yeah.
Of course.
Okay. Then let's make a few remarks, and I think Demetra does. Are you?
Can I give you
Want to see the plaque?
All right.
Something simple.
It's very nice, isn't it?
It certainly is.
You might want to read what
It says Charles Sanders Peirce, 1839-1914, got that. Distinguished scientist and philosopher in honor of the centenary of his death. This plaque placed in his study at Arisbe by representatives of the Charles S. Peirce International Centennial Congress held at the University of Massachusetts Lowell, July 2014. And I'll say a few words, and I think Demetra has some, and maybe others, I'm not sure. You made that arrangement. For the Peirce Foundation and the Peirce scholars everywhere, I want to thank Superintendent Donahue and Chief Deutsch for the installation of this commemorative plaque, for welcoming us here today. 40 years ago, a plan was made to turn this home into a museum to portray the architecture of Peirce's philosophy. But that carefully laid plan failed, and in the end, Arisbe fell into disrepair. Fortunately, when the Peirce Society was unable, as I am, unable to assume responsibility for Arisbe, the National Park Service came to the rescue. Now Peirce's home is the center of real scientific work that was inspired by Peirce's young friend, Gifford Pinchot, who Peirce had advised to study forestry. Peirce has been gone for 100 years, but his thought lives on, and as the Congress in Lowell has demonstrated, his influence is growing around the world. There is something special about this place, this room, where so many of Peirce's thoughts formed and were first written out. Let us hope that those ideas continue to spread and inspire others to continue the work that started here.
Please, Professor Demetra.
Well, on behalf of the Charles Sanders Peirce Society, we have come here to pay tribute to America's greatest philosopher of the last 2 centuries, the founder of pragmatism, Charles Sanders Peirce. Peirce belongs to this type of genuine thinkers whose work was not recognized during their lifetime. He had not held an academic position, as we all know, since 1883, and had lived the last third of his life in poverty, increasingly isolated, and finally ill. Despite this fact, during the last 2 decades of his life, he produced the intellectually most fruitful and adventurous part of his intellectual work. This was finally acknowledged only some decades after his death, and we are now witnessing an impressive impact of his thought on the development of all philosophical fields and many other disciplines. Peirce has produced an extremely significant work in almost all basic fields of philosophy, such as logic, symbolic logic, mathematical logic, ontology, metaphysics, epistemology, theory of meaning, ethics, religion, aesthetics, semiotics, mathematics, experimental psychology, cosmology, cartography, historiography. His work is a gold mine and a legacy that it is our duty to preserve, to share with the community of inquirers and philosophers, and to create a fertile ground for it to flourish today as well as in the years to come. Peirce's views on truth, scientific inquiry, open-endedness, projection of the present into the future, his dynamic conception of knowledge and physical reality, his belief in fallibilism, in indeterminateness, in growth, development, novelty, in concrete reasonableness of the work connected with the human intellect, and so many others, make him a thinker ahead of his time and offer the ground for opening new ways for thinking. We are proud and grateful for his legacy. Thank you.
Time for some words from you.
Well, yes, this will be completely ad-libbed. But it is such a pleasure for me to be in this house. I've been working on Peirce for nearly 30 years, and I've never come here, which is quite amazing. So there is a special pleasure for me to be here, and I'd like to speak in the names of all Peirce enthusiasts, and people who read Peirce and study Peirce and love Peirce, when coming to this house with a special kind of expectation, because this house means a great deal, not only physically, but also metaphorically. And the metaphor of this house is really powerful. When you think about Arisbe, and it is, of course, it had earlier names. There was, at some point, was called it Quicktown, and then he called it Wanda Farm. I don't know why, but at some point the whole place, not just the house, but the land that goes down to the Delaware River, was called, or he called it Wanda Farm. And then at some point in 1886 or so, he called, or no, 1888, he called it Sunbeams. And Sunbeams was in honor of the real owner of the house, who was Juliet. After all, it was Juliet who was the official owner of this house, as far as he was concerned. And so there was this letter that it's at some point from this house to Juliet, who was somewhere. And she started the letter, Sunbeams. And on top of that word Sunbeams, which was the name he was giving to this house because that's how he felt it was in honor and the love that he had for Juliet. He had drawn the shape of kissing lips. And not not as a sign of his love, but then about 1 or 2 years later, then both settled on the word Arisbe for the house. And there has been a lot of speculations, of course, about why did they choose Arisbe? And I was thinking a little about this, the scholarly interpretation that refers Arisbe back to ancient times, to a little town close to Miletus. And that, of course, it had to be a hypothesis coming from a specialist of classical Greek philosophy, like Fish. But I always thought, this is really strange, because the house was really to be that of Juliet. So why would Juliet care about that kind of odd connection to something, to a place in Greece that is actually not really known? You know, you find a tiny reference, you know, in the Odyssey or in the Iliad, and in a place that are really hard to find. So why it is that Peirce would actually convince even Juliet to call this Arisbe? Wasn't that a bit too intellectual or too hard or too scholarly? And then I thought, well, maybe there is a secret to the word. You know, there is something sort of a cipher in that word. And then I remembered, well, that cipher probably cannot be guessed at by people who speak English, because you know, Juliet was not English; she was French. So maybe there is a word hidden in the word Arisbe. And yes, of course, there is an anagram, and that's the French word baiser, a kiss. B-A-I-S-E-R is an anagram of the word Arisbe. And if Peirce wanted to express his love for Juliet, but not too openly, that was a wonderful anagram. And of course, we know that Peirce loved that kind of thing, that play with words. And that is the most poetic explanation. There is no evidence whatsoever, except that there is sunbeams with the drawing of a kiss on top of it. So that is marvelous continuity, and it is really the best way, even though it is not scholarly at all, it is really the best way to represent what Arisbe meant for that couple. It was the house of their love. So that house was, of course, not, they were unable to keep it up, they kept building it, and from what I understand, even when Peirce died, Victor Lenzen came to this house, and then he represented in two others. That house, this house, had overlooked. There were 25 rooms in this house. He said none of them was finished, not even on the ground floor. And they kept adding up, but none of them was really livable. And that went on until Juliet died in 1934, 20 years later. She may have made further additions herself. And as I understand from what Lenzen was saying, she kept adding with what kind of money, where she was getting a kind of annual allowance from the pincher without fully knowing it was from the pincher. She thought it was some kind of government allowance. And the pincher were discreet about it, and she was paying almost nothing. And at the end of the year, she had still some saving that she was putting into the house. And then when Lenzen asked questions to neighbors around, she asked someone in the Fauchère hotel, do you know why would she do this? And the answer was, yes, of course I do know, said the person at the Fauchère. Said, she wanted to bring Peirce a monument. And she kept adding her to the monument. And then, of course, what has happened next? A wonderful metaphor. This house has been preserved, and it has been transformed to the point that you probably have something in this house which is like the famous ship on the ocean that had to be rebuilt plank by plank, and we wonder, is it still the same ship? and this house has been completely redone, except that the contour is still the same, but really everything had to be redone. And yet it's still that's still the house. And that's a wonderful metaphor for what? For the magnificent enterprise the Peirce scholarship is itself embarked in. And I'm talking now as the editor of the Peirce edition. This is actually what we are aiming at, working on the Peirce papers. Now we are dealing with something that is utterly messy, but we want to reconstruct the whole thing and give it a shape that is firm and beautiful and solid and durable, just like what this house has turned itself into. That has been made itself a research center, and let's not forget Peirce's major metaphor that he wanted to be a philosophical edifice that would withstand the vicissitudes of time, and we want to build an edition that will withstand the vicissitudes of time. And for this occasion, that society has come and added another sign to this house to express our collective gratitude and recognitions not only of Peirce but of everyone who is working either physically or intellectually or scholarly to preserve and make him more and more durable, so that not just a small community but posterity worldwide can enjoy his writings and the continuation of his thought. That is a great mark, and for this I express our collective thanks.
As a representative of the virtual Arisbe,
yes,
can
the
you say
virtual.
something?
Yes. Some of you, many of you may have known Joe Ransdell, who passed at the end of 2010. Nathan, at that point, and Joe's good friend and colleague Jerry Desarts asked me to, and Ben Udell, take up the work of Peirce-L and Arisbe, and we've been doing that since. But today I want to talk mainly about Arisbe, and some of you may have seen a very recent edition of Transactions that Cathy and I co-edited on Joe Ransdell. And Cathy's introductory essay talks about how Joe conceived of the Arisbe website as Peirce perhaps conceived of the rooms at Arisbe, different things happening in different rooms, perhaps logic being done here and the various types of philosophy there and so forth and so on. And so he imagined that we could do that and also different activities could happen on the website things that were collaborative, research aspects, different rooms on the site that would represent the places in Arisbe where certain work might be done. And it didn't work out that way. It turned out to be a different organization, and it turns out to be, I think, a very good organization. But later in life, a few years before his death, Joe started to talk about the possibility of setting up rooms again, but this time to do things like a wiki in one room, and using new technologies, perhaps videos and things like that in another room, and so forth and so on. That never got materialized either, although we're working in those directions. But I guess what I'd like to say is that Arisbe, the website, is alive and well and growing. We've added many new features to it, new books on Peirce, doctoral dissertations as they come up. Everything's there. We're talking now with the Commons people about doing a joint project. So Arisbe, the website, is alive and well, and I'm happy to say that. And I also would encourage you to read Cathy's introductory essay on Joe Ransdell. It's really, really good.
Thanks. Does anyone want to add a few words?
Or ask a question? Want to ask a question?
Oh no, wait, to complete everything first, yeah.
Then I will say only one thing, two things. One, to express our deepest gratitude to the superintendent and to Kara and the whole organization for all the preparations and for this event, and thanking all of you coming from it's a very international meeting, not only from the United States, but from Greece, Brazil, England, Spain, New Zealand, Italy, United States, Belgium, Spain. It's the globalization of a scholarship around Peirce. And second thing I want to add is to express in loud voice that the driving force of this event is not with us today. Rosa Maria Mayorga, who started 2 years ago, said, we have to do that. And she convinced me, and I started to talk with Nathan, and we produced the text, and we circulated in the society, and she made it, and she's taking care of her father. It's great, it's extremely ill, but I want to express our gratitude to her work with an ovation.
You say there are some papers there that people can take.
So, yeah, you answered my question. I wanted to ask people where they were all from, because I suspected some of you were maybe a little international. I didn't hear Canada. Anybody from Canada? We get a lot of visitors from
We
Canada.
lived in Canada for 15 years, is that now?
So, my name's Rich Evans. I'm an ecologist here. And I guess before we get started, I wanted to point out there's handouts here. I'm going to be leading a little walk through the house so you can see all the rooms. And there's a sign-up book. I certainly want all of you to sign up and say where you're from. So before you leave, do that. I guess I wanted to. I really like the explanation of the name Arisbe. That's going to be my favorite explanation of all time, if I followed it all. But I also read when this was being proposed as a museum, the Park Service prepared a historic architectural report, and there's some historical documents in there. And there's one account, there's probably, I don't know how many accounts of why they chose Arisbe. I'd heard the Greek, the association with the Greek philosophy. They also mentioned that Juliet, her favorite butterfly, the Latin name for her favorite butterfly was Arisbe. So I kind of like that one best. Until you came up with the French kiss, that was like awesome. So, I guess, I don't know how we want to proceed, if you want to all sign up here first. And then we'll leave it.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, okay.
And please share with the rest of your members that they're welcome to come and visit anytime they're near in this area.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Really appreciate that.
You probably couldn't keep them away, but you know.